So, Mr. Schoeb, thank you for joining us today here. I have basically one question, and then you can just elaborate on that question. And that would be that in the light of the current crises that are facing Europe, which steps have to be taken to promote a social, ecological and democratic economy?
I think in order to deal with environmental policy or social policy, we should not relate these issues to the current crisis. I think we have to deal with so far-reaching problems in ecological aspects as well as in social aspects that we need fundamental policy reform beyond the current crisis. What is needed? I guess the most important thing we have to consider is to create acceptability of far-reaching policy reforms in a democratic society. And how can we achieve such acceptability? I think first of all, transparency. The government, the politicians, societal groups have to be very clear about the objectives. And second, we have to discuss about the efficiency of the instruments. The more efficient the instruments are we use both in environmental policy and in social policy, the more resources are left to do these things even more or to use resources for other topics which are still at hand.
And could you tell us about what kind of policy reforms you're thinking about?
Yeah, of course, if you look at environmental issues, climate change will be at the top of the agenda for the next 50 years. That will be for sure. Here the problem is international coordination at first hand. It is very problematic to do climate policy as a single country, because then we are going to provide a private public good and the acceptability within that country might deteriorate because people have the feeling that they are exploited by other countries. So that's one issue. With respect to social policy, rising inequality is a current issue, but it cannot be solved within a short time period. So we need a long-lasting reform or long-lasting idea of how to deal with social justice that allows us to live in a socially accepted democratic system.
Right. And one last question of comprehension. So you're saying that we should differentiate between the euro crisis as a current crisis or the financial crisis and the long-term social and especially ecological crises. Is that right?
Yeah, in principle, yes. So we have a crisis and we can learn about this crisis, but the question you have asked first, how should that be related to environmental issues or social issues? I'm very reluctant to make a too close relationship. Of course, when we have a crisis, maybe priorities are different for a short time, but that is my argument. For the long run, the priorities should be clear, and that is something we have to make sure within a democratic discussion. What are the priorities in environmental politics and what are the priorities in social politics?